Welcome back to movementprofessional.com. So today Corey and I are going to go over the supine position and look at how we assess that, how we progress it. We're going to do this under the idea of the movement continuum. So the movement continuum would be you take any movement and you can break it down into the positions of that movement, which are basically like the static snapshots of the movement, and then the transitions, which are more of the dynamic change from one position to the next. So with supine, it's mostly going to be just looking at the position, because supine is the position in itself, and we want to see how the idea of supine, which is basically just anytime that you're face up, how we can make that harder, how we can make that easier, and in that process we want to see if the patient is having any pain, what's their breath control looking like, so breath will tell you how stressed they are in the position, so how easy is it for them to maintain a position. And then we also want to just look at the posture and have some postural cues that we're looking for to make sure that people are getting into the most optimal position. And we'll talk about that as we go through it. So what I want Corey to start with is just lie in a flat out supine position. All right, so this is going to be not necessarily the easiest position, but I'll just have him start there for the time being. This is the pure supine position, so the legs are extended out in front. And first thing I want to understand is, do you have any discomfort in that position right now? So he does not, so he can be completely supine. If this became painful, one of the things we can look at to make it easier is to make his body a little bit more flexed, which to me changes the leverage of the position. So if his legs are farther away from his head, there's more opportunity for his lumbar spine to be overextended. And if he's having lower back pain, this can actually be painful for him. So this is not going to be the easiest position to start in, but he can do this. So if we wanted to make it a little bit easier though, I would actually put his legs up on a box or a bench or a chair in close to a 90-90 position. So this isn't exactly 90 degrees at the hips, but we're going to get as close as we can here. So now it should be much easier for him to rest his back on the ground. All right, so that's going to generally be a more supportive position just because we've elevated his legs. He doesn't have to do this work, which is important. If I take this box away and I just have him, that's a totally different exercise. His legs are in the same position, but he has to be very active in his hip flexors. So this becomes a little bit more of a core exercise. So let's go ahead and put the legs back down. All right, so this would be, for a lot of people, I might just start them with their legs elevated, knowing that this is going to be the easier position, especially if they have any type of symptoms coming in. All right, so from here, we can kind of look at some breath control. So the first thing I'm going to have Corey do is just put his hands right on his belly. And I want to just see if he can inhale in a manner that expands his lower belly. And also eventually we'll move up into the rib cage here. And then when he exhales, I want to see if he can compress or just have the belly fall. So go ahead and inhale. Corey does a good job. Belly comes up. And then as he exhales, he comes down. So when we look at breath control, it really depends on, how well the patient is doing with it, how new they are to breath work. I may not spend a ton of time here. I might just get a general assessment of looking at how stressed they look in the position. But we can be pretty specific in how we look at the breath. So if Corey does a good job at breathing into the lower belly, then I might have him move his hands up into the ribs. And now what I want to see is when he inhales, can he breathe the ribs wide on the inhale, and then when he exhales, can the ribs come down and in on the exhale? If he does a good job there, then I might look at his chest. When he inhales, can the sternum move up towards the ceiling? And when it exhales, how is it doing coming down and depressing a little bit? And it's just their natural rhythm of saying that the belly fills, the ribs go wide, and that the sternum comes up as he breathes in, and that everything just naturally falls. The compensations that we might see, and we often see, is instead of inhaling and having the abdomen move forward, the ribs move wide, Corey may breathe up into his neck. So his inhale may actually create an inward motion of the abdomen, and then the exhale may push outward. We don't want that. That's going to be one of the things that the first thing we're going to notice is there just that direction of inhalation creates expansion, exhalation creates compression. If that's a difficult thing, that's probably where we're going to start, and that's going to be the first thing that we work on. All right, so to progress this positioning though, so say somebody is having some lower back pain and we want to get them closer to supine without it, we will go away from the box And then instead of going right to supine, we could just put this foam roller under the knees. And then this gets us a little closer to the full extension there, but we have a little support under the knees. All right, so at this point, the back will move more towards extension. Again, Corey didn't have pain in the first place, but if he did, what we can work on here is seeing if a little bit of motion towards actively flattening the back or going into a posterior pelvic tilt, does that take it away or not? If it does, then that becomes an exercise right there. We can also tie that into the breath. So go ahead and inhale, fill the belly. And then on the exhale, use that exhale to create a little bit of a tilt so you can think about flattening the back into the ground. So we always want to use pain as our number one assessment point. If there is any pain, it can be great feedback for what direction we want to go with motion, so we can find a directional preference. Sometimes going into this flat back position might make the symptoms worse. Then we know that going in that direction might be the opposite of what we want to do, so we may have to actually ask them to kind of go the other way and see if that feels better. And then we could also find out sometimes if people are really in a sensitive way, supine might not even be a good starting point. We might have to start people on their side or in prone. So pain's going to be our number one guiding principle of where we want to start people and how we want to progress them. All right, so we have the idea of breath control, we have the idea of progressing posture. Again, the full expression would be obviously just getting someone back to supine, making sure they're okay there. One of the first exercises I like to do in supine is, if they're okay being fully there, is now get them to be a little bit active here. So let's bring your legs together, point your toes a little bit, and then create that sense of pelvic tilting here, and then maintain that positioning and go through a couple breaths. So you're going to inhale, try to get wide, fill your belly. On the exhale, draw in, feel your pelvis compress towards each other, feel some abdominal tension, ribs come down. All right, on the next inhale, let's take both arms, reach them up to the ceiling. You're still trying to create that idea of the pelvic tilt. Inhale, get a little bit wider. Exhale, ribs come down, belly comes in. Okay. If that still feels easy, we can start moving the arms a little bit more overhead. All right, and take some breaths there. So now the arms act as a little bit of resistance, so you have to work a little harder in your middle. Okay. If that starts to feel like you can control that, we'll bring the legs back up. Let's have you bend them first. All right, so now we taking the feet off the ground, so it gets a little bit harder. So we're going to bring it back to this 90-90 position. See if you can do that without losing position, without any pain. All right, and then we'll straighten just one leg. And keep one leg bent, one leg straight. Take a few breaths there. Now it's really working. We're seeing some shaking going on here. And then straighten the other leg. Same type of breathing. Any pain with that? Good. So the only thing that I might guide as a therapist, I might come behind, give Corey a little bit of a guidance of the head to give him a little bit of a longitudinal tug there. All right, and then bend your knees and relax. All right, so for most people, you're not going to start them there, but it's just nice to see, like, this can turn into a really challenging exercise really quickly as we add different layers to it. All right, so the things that we're manipulating are the general posture. How much support are we using? So if we put a box under the legs and we put him closer to a 90-90 position, we're giving him kind of the most support to have his back rest on the ground. As we move his legs a little bit farther out, or even just have him rest closer to supine, he's not going to have as much contact with his lower back to the ground. There's a little less support. So if someone with a sensitive lower back, that actually can become problematic right there. And we might have to just make that a little easier, do some work there. If that's all good, then we can actually take the support away. Now he's got to use his core musculature to keep him in position. And then we're always assessing the breath, right? So we make sure that he can get the direction of the breath right. As we add a little bit more challenge, we want to make sure that he can get the direction right, but then we expect more activity to happen in the muscles around the center there. All right, so all of that goes into a nice supine assessment. And the idea of the continuum is that we're stopping wherever we need to stop based on where the patient is ready, right? If they have pain, we just back it off a little bit right to the cusp of the onset of their pain, and that's where they're ready to train right now. But we have this idea of always looking at knowing the next step forward and then always knowing what the next regression back is. So we're always looking to make it as hard as possible, and that's where fitness and rehab really just blends together if we look at every movement, every position in this continuum. hopefully that makes sense. If you have any questions, you can go to movementprofessional.com. I'll see you next time.